So you can actually start this truck with your phone. All you need is the My Chevrolet app, and it is really just as easy as hitting the start button and Bob's your uncle. However, my name is Thomas, and today I'm tinkering on this Chevrolet Colorado ZR2. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe. Let's get right into the information, especially since some of it might actually surprise you in both a good and a bad way. Chances are, if you're interested in a ZR2, you're probably some dude in his 20s or 30s, or if you're more like me, you're actually a 5-year-old, because what Chevrolet has done with the ZR2 is essentially make a road legal and life-size Hot Wheels truck. But just before we dive into what it brings to the table and how it'll change in the very near future, let's hit the rewind button and aim for 1994.
The 2006 Honda Ridgeline.
1994, the first year that we saw the name ZR2. GM first released it on the Chevy S10 and its cousin, the GMC Sonoma, the predecessors to today's Colorado and Canyon. It also grazed vehicles such as the Tracker and Blazer. Adding a bigger personality, the rims were meaner, the tires were fatter, and the styling was edgier. But just as fast as it appeared, it vanished just over a decade later in 2005. GM, later realizing the power of nostalgia, decided to surprise us all with the ZR2's reintroduction in 2017. But with a twist. This time, it took itself far more seriously with more unique features and was only on the Chevy. Instead, the GMC Canyon later received a new trim level called AT4, meaning all-terrain 4x4, for its 2021 model year, which in a nutshell was designed to bring a more mature and subtle approach to an off-roading trim. So what is it that makes the ZR2 so special? Well, apart from being the coolest mid-sized truck on the market, it also comes with a 2-inch lift. And a part of that is the Multimatic DSSV, or dynamic suspension, spool valve shocks that incorporate nitrogen and were designed in Ontario, Canada. Hashtag represent A. The ZR2 also boasts unique rims and tires, has a 3.5-inch wider body than normal thanks to the epic ZR2 body panels that also give it a pre-runner / Baja look. In fact, if you get low enough, you can see the entire front of the tire. There's badging everywhere, an off-road sports bar with LEDs, a front and rear locking differential so you know that it means business, as well as 2 engine options. The one in this, which is the V6 gasoline, as well as the only diesel engine that you'll find in a mid-sized truck that it shares with its sister, the Canyon, that cranks out 369 pound-foot of torque, along with most of the other bells and whistles you'll expect on a vehicle of this caliber. Essentially, most of the things that you'd want from the world of modifications, except it comes from the factory like this. As for the changes that the ZR2 is receiving for the 2021 model year, this is getting a mid-gen refresh and minor facelift. I say minor because it's nothing crazy. It's just a couple of things that they've tweaked to keep it going while they work on the next generation, which I'm expecting them to release in about 2025. But what has been done very effectively. For example, cooling. The new front end is not only going to give it a fresh new look, but also improves engine cooling with the open design, and Chevrolet written out on either end instead of the Chevy logo. Now for my favorite part, pros versus cons. Of course, starting off with the pros, it rides like an absolute dream. It doesn't float over things like a Raptor does. It's actually got a stiffer suspension than you'd expect, but the steering is so light. The extra ride height makes you feel like you own the road, and power is plentiful. This 3.6-liter V6 engine mounted to an 8-speed transmission cranks out 308 horsepower. And the cabin noise actually surprised me, but in a good way. You can hear the engine, there's a nice deep groan you can hear, but it's not overwhelming. And also, the wind and tire noise is far below what I was willing to accept. It's not even close to being annoying. Yes, it's going to be noisier than your great-grandma's Honda Civic from 1995, but it's barely noticeable and you get used to it very quickly. Now, I shouldn't have to say this, but this beast is as eye-catching as trucks come. Chevrolet knocked the design out of the park with the ZR2 and Bison edition of the Colorado. To me, trucks are some of the most enjoyable and fun vehicles to drive, especially when you put them into two-wheel drive because the power is going to the rear, and turn off traction control. And in classic ZR2 fashion, if you press and hold down the traction control button, it will turn off what Chevrolet has named StabiliTrak, which will essentially encourage your Colorado to start dancing. But as no vehicle is perfect, let's touch on the cons, and sadly, there are more than I expected, so bear with me. To start, even though it's got bigger wheels and a 2-inch lift, which make it harder to access the bed, it still has the same 8.9 inches of ground clearance that the lower and far cheaper Nissan Frontier Pro 4X has. Speaking of which, I've put a video together where I put these two competitors head to head to find out how the off-road midsize truck world and technology has changed over the years. If you want to check it out, I'll leave it linked underneath the like button. Now, while a necessary change, the ZR2 has only a tow rating of 5,000 pounds, which is down from the record setting for a mid-sized truck, 7,700 pounds, that the normal Colorado has when paired with a diesel engine. And just because it was my favorite, I'm disappointed that they recently discontinued the bright red paint. Come on, every truck needs to come in bright red. It's to match all the plaid that truck drivers wear. As for the interior, it is painfully dull, plain, and bland, which in Chevrolet's defense was done on purpose, so it's easier to clean it after you get tons of dust and mud inside your truck after you go off-roading. But something like red stitching on the seats or on the dash would have been a really nice touch to make the ZR2 just as nice on the inside as it is on the outside. The backup camera is superb, but it needs parking sensors, as the big hood and tall design can make it tricky to get around tight spaces. And while there are on the Colorado, it's just not an option on the ZR2. Now, I'm putting this down to the fact that the normal Colorado and the ZR2 edition take up a different amount of space. The ZR2 is wider, taller, and uses different body panels, so it would need a different set of sensors, or at least you'd have to configure them differently. But come on, Chevrolet, how hard could it have been to configure the sensors just for a truck that is slightly different? After all, the ZR2 is the one that needs it the most, especially with the higher ride height, wider body, and the fancy hood, which did take some getting used to. So hopefully they put that on this trim soon. Also, I've never seen a sunroof on the ZR2, even though it's on the normal Colorado. And just a piece of advice in case you are getting a ZR2, make sure to upgrade the sound system, as the base ones are absolutely rubbish. And this isn't a con, but make sure you also get the sport bar and the lights, because that is just a staple of the ZR2. Now, something to be aware of is for the price, you can get a far more luxurious vehicle from the BMW, Mercedes, and Audi sort of realm. This just doesn't have that welcome home level of luxuriousness that you'll find on those sorts of cars. Chevrolet has gone in and added some amazing features like a heated steering wheel, dual cushion heated leather seats, an auto mode on top of the normal two-wheel drive, and 4x4 high and low, the easy open tailgate, automatic dual zone climate control, even what they have named, and this is just my favorite, a chapstick holder for when you're in the middle of a desert and your lips get dry. But for some reason, the seat has a manual tilt handle. And lastly, an oh crap handle would have been nice, especially since they've put them in the back, but not on the front, and this is an off-road truck. And most disappointing of all is it has halogen lights, not LEDs, even though when you pay thousands of dollars to get your off-road bar and then the lights on top of that, you're getting LED lights up there. But they couldn't add them in the front for normal driving. So the Raptor is the better truck, but is the ZR2 better value than a Ford Raptor? A decent ZR2 will run you $60,000 Canadian, while a Raptor will burn a hole in your pocket $40,000 deeper, for a grand total of $100,000 Canadian, 2/3 more. So really, we're asking if the Raptor is 2/3 better of a vehicle. Let's put it this way, if for the next 100 days I was to receive a grand every single day, I would buy a ZR2 on day 60 and save the rest. But then on the other hand, there are people that swear by full-size trucks and would wait the entire 100-day period to buy a Raptor. And that's why this is such a ridiculous question, because they're completely different tools. The interesting aspect is the ZR2 is impressive enough to make a lot of us ask that question in the first place. Hell, it's why you've made it this far in the video and we're interested in the first place. And that to me is what makes this truck so special. There is no question the Raptor will oblige obliterate this truck in pretty much every way that isn't fitting into a tight space, thanks to the ZR2's midsize body being almost 1 foot narrower. But this has been what we'll call my attainable and realistic dream truck since its release. I love what the ZR2 does to the Colorado. Of course, my proper dream truck being the Ram TRX that they have finally announced and taken out of being a concept and are finally producing it. So for the big question, who should buy a ZR2? Well, if you're looking for a well-rounded off-road mid-sized truck that is not only the coolest thing on the market, is unbelievably eye-catching, comes with a plethora of amazing accessories, is easy to drive, something you can take off-road on the weekends and still use as your daily driver in the week, then this is the truck for you. But more important than anything, I just think you'll know when this is the truck for you. This literally calls my name, and it has since its release. I'm completely head over heels for it, but Chevrolet, if you're listening, I'm not buying one until you release the bright red paint on the facelifted version. I know you're not doing it for 2021, so maybe 2022. I promise you, I'll come buy a truck off of you. So then, what Chevy has built can only be summed up as the perfectly imperfect mid-sized truck. In other words, the more I got to know it, the more good and bad seemed to just fade away into character, which is something the ZR2 has in spades. It eventually didn't matter that there was no push start button, the back can be a squeeze, the rear window's manual, it bizarrely only comes with one pouch in the back, the tailgate doesn't lock with the rest of the doors, it's still decently plasticky, and can quickly get pricey. But I accepted its flaws and just had a blast. Yes, those things would have been nice, but like most cars, there's room for improvement. The good fuel economy mixed with a safe and comfy ride only scratched the surface of this truck. From Apple CarPlay and Android Auto to the wireless phone charging, the ZR2 is in no rush to become boring like so many of the new cars nowadays. Instead, it'll keep surprising you long after you've settled into it. It means business, while being the best of every world, and Chevy has still designed it to be simple enough to easily work on by yourself, exactly as a truck should be. I'm hoping to see Chevrolet share the ZR2 badging with vehicles like the new Blazer, just like they did back in the 90s, and keep developing trucks like the ZH2, the hydrogen-powered ZR2 that was built for the military. This will hands down be the toughest vehicle to give back, and I think most owners will agree with me when I say that they came for the styling and stayed for the experience. But that's it. That's everything that you need to know about the Chevrolet Colorado ZR2. Of course, let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Do you agree or disagree with me that this is just one of the coolest vehicles ever? Of course, if you're new here, feel free to subscribe. Once we hit 100,000 subscribers, I will be shaving my lid for a kid, and I could not be more excited. There's a lot of hair on top of my head, and it's got to go to someone. And of course, a massive thank you to Jessica, who lent me her ZR2. She's a good friend and fellow personal trainer, and I will link her Instagram and website down next to a video in the description where I talk about the ZR2 up against the Frontier, the old versus the new, Japan versus America. Once again, my name is Thomas, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace. Is it ZR2 or ZR2?